So we might not complete the class as planned today, but any questions so far from your end? Welcome, Akande.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any question from your end? From your end?
Okay. My own issue is that having gone through the daily schedule,
Yeah.
along the line, I wanted to do something. Of course, I think I wasn't concentrating too much. So before I knew it, the thing started trying to arrange. I deleted some things. Of course, actually gone through all the stuff except one that I've not done. But the thing is not properly arranged, and I tried arranging it very well. So I think the problem I had was probably not understanding how to create class very well, those classes. But I'm sure I will catch up as we get to the next stage very well, properly, because I'm enjoying it anyway.
Okay. That's fine. Abdul, do you have any questions so far?
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. I said that's fine. Abdul, do you have any question? Okay. So what we've been doing basically is to help you grasp the basics of how to build out components, elements right here on Webflow. So understanding things like the CSS properties style, like the display options. Okay, so if we go to style, some of the things we'll be trying to explain include this style selector here, which allows you to create a class. And we said a class is basically like an identifier for elements. So with classes, when you create a class, okay, you can reuse it on other elements by simply calling the class. So right now we created this class of navbar, and you can see the properties we added, they are all highlighted. If you notice, all these ones that are highlighted are basically properties that we've added to this particular class. And you can see all these properties these other ones, they are inherited. So if you come in here, all these other ones, they are inherited. But these other ones, they are properties that we directly, so the orange ones are inherited, okay, while the blue ones are the properties we directly added to this class. So it's important you understand this. So you can basically give the styling of this class to any other element by simply calling that CSS property. So if you call that class, okay, by simply calling that CSS class, so if you just add this class to any other element, you are going to have the same styling you've applied to this. So we started with the style selector, and we talked about classes. Then we went to layout. On layout, we talked about things like the display property. We said by default, any element you add to your page is going to be having this display block, and the block will always go from edge to edge. Even if it's a piece of text, once you choose your display to be block, it's going to go from edge to edge, right? That's what we said. But then if you want them to stack closer to each other, then you can go ahead and use flex. Flex, you can choose different types of direction. You can choose to flex it horizontally, or you can flex it vertically. So when you flex horizontally, any other element you add will be, will be added in a horizontal line, right? But if it's on block, they will all get a new line. They will be getting a new line, a new line, a new line. But if you use flex, you can now ask them to flex what? Horizontally, except you choose vertical. So if you choose vertical, it's going to stack them on top of each other. Then you have this particular one, this last one, we didn't use it much, which is wrap. So this one acts, once you activate this wrap, it begins to act like a grid. So when you get to the end, when it flexes to the end, it will just wrap around the element or the container. Then the next one we have is grid. With grid, we said if you click or if you use flex display grid, it's basically going to be displayed as a grid. It's going to give you grids, so you can specify the number of columns and the number of rows you want, and you can drop in your elements inside each cell. But then if you want to build like a card, what you want to do is to drop like a div that will contain the design. And once you are done, you can copy and paste, right? And depending on the display you are using, you are likely going to see different properties here. If you are using block, you are going to see different properties here. If you are using flex, you are going to see different properties here. If you are using grid, you are going to see different properties here. But this one is basically using flex, and you use flex a lot of the time, okay? And we have the alignment. If you're using flex, you can align things here, maybe to the center left, center right, top left. So these are very important. And to add the spacing between elements, you could simply use this gap here to increase it. Now, that is style. We've talked about, we covered style selector, we covered layouts. The next thing we covered was spacing. Okay. Under spacing, we talked about the box model. So under the box model, we talk about the real size of an element. We talked about the width, which we talked here. We said any element you add, they always come with some box around them. So for the box around them, if you want to add space inside that box, that's inside the container of that box, you use padding. So with padding, so you can add space inside the container holding the elements. Just like you can see the space between this blue button and the white here, and then this blue button and the white at the top, that is padding. Okay, that is padding. And you can add left and right as well. You can also add left and right padding. Meanwhile, aside the padding, you also have the margin. Margin basically gives you a physical distance between the element you have and the next element. So if it was margin we added to this element, it would have shifted and you would see a blank area at the top. But if it is padding, we will still see this white. Instead, it will kind of compress the elements inside. So with your padding, you don't want to add too much. But based on the design you'll be given, you can investigate it and you'll be able to come up with the numbers to use. Then for the margin, we also have, just like the padding, we have left, right, bottom, and center. But then if you want to center any element, anytime you want to center an element, the best way to achieve that is to set this margin to auto. That's on the left, set it to auto, and on the right, set it to auto. Okay. Anytime you want to center a container. So if you have any container at all and you want to center it, make sure you go to margin and you choose auto, and then auto on the left, auto on the right. That will make sure that the element is directly centered, directly structured at the center. So you don't want to make a mistake whereby you are designing and all the elements are on the right or on the left. Okay, especially the container, not the element, sorry, the container that you are working with. You want to make sure it is centered on the screen. Okay, it's very, very important. So the main container, not everything, right? Like this one, you can see this particular one within center auto. But you see this particular one, we know that where is it? The container itself. I'm looking for the main container that we used. So for the main container, there's a container before this one. You use auto so that everything will be aligned. M container. Okay, you can see the main container. We've used auto here and auto here. That way, everything will be in on the center of the screen. Okay, at the center of the screen. So it's very important. And immediately after that, we now talked about sizes. Okay, we talked about sizes. So sizing can be confusing sometimes, but if you take time, you understand it. Under sizing, you have two things you want to size, and that is the width and the height. These are the two properties you want to size, the width and the height. But before you really understand this width and height, you want to understand the units. So on the unit, we have a lot of them, but we are more concerned about four major ones. The first one is px, which is pixels. This one is the one you likely see in most design softwares like Figma, Photoshop, CorelDRAW. You see px a lot, right? Pixel. And with pixel, you want to follow the numbers, and pixel basically means depending on the pixel you are using, you want to follow up the numbers based on the design you are going to be working with. Now with percentages, we already know what percentage is. If you set anything to 100%, it is going to cover the entire screen, right? So if this is the main container and we've given it a fixed width, anything inside that you set to 100% will not stretch outside it. It will only stretch from here to here. But if you don't make it 100%, you can reduce it. So that's 100% for you. Then we have M and we have REM, we have CH, we have all these are different units of measurement. But one of the ones we are likely going to be using much, and you are also likely going to be using most of the time is pixel, percentage, REM, and then this view width or view height. They're almost the same. Okay. Now, what exactly is this REM? REM is one of the most recommended units of measurement on the web. One REM makes up 16 of these pixels. So anytime you hear REM, it is 16 pixels. So if you don't use 16 pixels, you can use one REM. But most of the time, I'll be advising you to use REM because REM is more, how do I put it? It's more responsive than PX. So with PX, it's going to be counting the pixel on the phone. Okay, REM will be counting like the remaining pixels around it. So REM is a little bit more when it comes to responsiveness. REM is a little bit more responsive. Okay, and then we have this VW, that is view width. When you use VW on the width of an element or a section, it's simply telling that element that no matter the system the person is viewing the website with, it should cover the entire width. Okay, if you open it on a phone, it should cover the entire width. If you open it on a laptop, entire width. If you open it on a TV, it should expand, cover the entire width. So there is no fixed size. Okay, it's a little bit like 100%, but not 100%. Now, if I change this particular section now, like I said, if I change this particular section to view width instead of 100%, it's going to break out from here and make sure it covers the entire screen. Meanwhile, view height, which is VH, covers the entire height. I don't know if you visited all those websites. There this website that when you visit, the hero section will cover the entire screen. It doesn't matter the size of the screen that you are visiting with. It will cover the entire screen. That one is what you call as view height. So not the entire screen, the entire height of the screen. Okay. So if you want to design like a hero section, whereby you want the width to take up the system's view, the system width and the system height, you want to make sure you set your width to view width and the height to what? View height. Okay, that's what this VW and VH means. So now, once you understand this, there are three other things you should note. You have width, you have minimum width, and you have maximum width. Okay, you can use width to define the width of that element. For the other two down, you can now use it for responsiveness. You can say, okay, no matter what happens, don't go beyond this width. And no matter what happens, don't go above this width. Because if you don't set this constraint, if you open a website on a TV, things might just be too stretched. But if you know you want to do like a full okay, I'll check this shortly. So if you check, if you check, you want to make sure you come in here, set your max width. You always set your max width. So you can see we have been using 80. So if you want to know what this 80 actually is, you can do 80 times 16. You get the actual value of what we are doing here, okay? Because you can see we measure our screen sizes in pixels, actually, not rem. So we make sure we measure our screen sizes in pixels. So here you can come in here, fit in the maximum width that that particular container can stretch to, and then you put in the minimum width that it can what stretch to. Now, if you say maximum width and you put in a number and you come to the main width and choose 100%, that means it will take up this number. But you have to also put the minimum width so that it can always work well. The same thing we just explained here applies to the height as well. The extra option we have here is overflow. So when you have contents that spill outside the grid or outside the container, you are going to just see it spill out. But if you don't want to see it, if you want it hidden, you can go ahead and say overflow hidden. So this is very important. We are going to use some of this in our advanced section when we will now design a full website. You can see, if you notice the website we did, we just use it to practice different sections. It's not like a particular business. We have OPay here, we have build your product roadmap. The next project we are going to be doing is like a full website from Figma direct. We'll do a full website, we'll add animations, we'll add transitions, right? Advanced stuff that people actually pay for, right? But for you to actually understand all those things when we get there, it's always good to understand how to build basic things, because at the end of the day, most of the websites you are going to be handling, it is really on the home page that you finish work, okay? Because on the home page or the landing page, you are trying to use it to sell to people. But when you start going to inner pages, if you visited a lot of websites, you know what I'm saying. On the home page, they finish work. You see sliders rotating here and there. You see a lot of things, you know. But by the time you start going to company about us, we just notice that they are mostly block, pictures, text, block, pictures, text. So that's why we started with how to lay out those kind of elements. Okay. And after that, we went to the most confusing one and also the most difficult to grasp. It's actually confusing and difficult to grasp, but once you really understand it, it's easy. In fact, this is how you build most of those advanced and advanced websites that you see elements flying around. It is by simply understanding this word, property called position. So what exactly is position? Position simply means how you position an element within its boundary, within its CSS flex box. Okay, how do you position an element within each box? The box model we talked about. Okay, remember, once you impute anything, it's going to be rendered as block by default. Now the position is, how do you want it to be positioned? Static simply means it's just going to be there. That is static. Okay, to really understand this, I'll do it inside an element. So let me come in here and get a new section. Okay, it added it to the top. Where's my new section? Just a minute. Okay, now let me just add a lot of padding to this so that we can see what we are working with. Okay, I want to have some white spaces inside so we can see what we are working with. Let me even increase it more. I need more spacing. Okay. Now let's drag in a container inside this. Okay, and this container, I'm going to give it a definite size so that we understand what's going on. Let's go to rem. Okay, let me give it 10 rem, and let's also give the height 10 rem. Okay. Now let me color it so we can see what's going on inside it. Let me just color it. Now you can see that this element right here is positioned from the left. You know, in English, we always, in Western world and different parts of the world, we always go from left to right, right? So you can see this thing is strictly positioned on the right, on the left-hand side. And here we have it displayed to block. So let's just use block for this example. When you say position static, that means it should maintain where it is. It can't move. It's going to be where it is and will be there. Remember, you can't even add something next to it. Let me duplicate it and you see what happens. Now, let me duplicate it. Let me just duplicate this one. And we are going to call this one positioning. Okay. We are going to call that one positioning, and we are going to change the color so that we understand. So I want you guys to really ask questions so that if you have, oops, oh my God, I didn't do rename. I went to just So let me delete this one. And let me say static instead. I'm just doing this for doing sake. So also the width, let's say that width. Where's that width? Okay, we're using rem for the width. What did we use? 10, right? So 10 for the width, 10 for the height. Let me change the color so we can differentiate them. Okay, so you can see how it works. Okay, this is how it works basically. If you keep adding elements, they'll be stacking on top of each other. Right now, this is set to fixed, position fixed. And this one is set to, sorry, static. This one also is set to static. Now, you can't actually move them around. You can't move them around. That is the issue. If you want to be able to move your section or your container or any element around within each bounding box, you need to come to position and go from static to relative. Now, when I change it to relative, nothing much happens. But right now, if you look under here, you can see that it has given us left, right, top, bottom properties that we can use to move this element around. So right now, I can move this way. I can also move it towards this way. But what's the difference between this one and the next one we are likely going to talk about, which is absolute? Okay, absolute. Now let's talk about relative. When you are moving an object around using relative position, okay, it's going to move it within the bounding box of that element. This is to say that I can't fix anything here. Remember the original place this image was. I can't actually fix any other thing here because this element is still being seen here. Everything, even these white spaces, is still here, just that it's now a negative space, but it's still considered this area. If you go and inspect this, okay, if you inspect this, we've not published. If we go ahead and inspect this, I want us to look at what's going on here. Under the positioning, you can see, let's go down. This is our element, this is padding, and you can see what is happening under positioning right here. Now, this is still part, all these white parts now is still part of this bounding box, right? But then what it allowed us to do was just to shift it around. So if you still want to place anything here, if you want to place anything close to this guy now, it will still consider it as part of this element. So it will not drop anything here. If you drop anything, let's say we started using flex right here, any element you add, none of them will occupy this space. They will immediately take the next space available. This particular white spaces that we've added here is still going to consider it as part of the space of this element. My pen is not here. I would have launched this whiteboard to still explain better. But that is position relative. That means you are basically positioning this relative to its bounding box. Remember, when you use position static, you can see it has gone back to the original position, right? With if you want to just be able to move things left a little bit or just shift things a bit, you can change the positions to relative. So you can just move things around. It came back here because it's still remembering the last setting we did. Okay. So if I come back to 0, you can see we can move it around. We can move it around anywhere, anyhow, but it will still respect this space we have right inside here. Meanwhile, if you want to move things really freely without them still having to occupy those spaces they've left, That is what you use this next one for, which is basically position absolute. So if you see absolute position, an element relative to its closest position parent or default to the body element. So when you say absolute, with absolute, you can see it is like it's outside the entire grid, this entire container. Okay, I don't know if you notice what happened. Let me go back to static. Watch the white part. Okay, so we are back to static now. So watch what happened when I change it, when I switch it to absolute. You can see it has removed this from the confine of this container. So this is now flying around on its own. It is now like an overlay. It is no longer bounded inside this container. It is now on its own. So you use things like absolute to create like drop downs or overlay, because you notice that when you're on a website, when you actually click on a drop down, right, like this drop down, if I click this, you can see that this actually overlays on top of this container. So this kind of element, you use absolute for them. They become like an overlay. It literally removes that element from the confines of the main container, from the constraint of the main container, and then lays it on top of it. So anytime you want to create anything that you want to move freely, or you want to lay on top of something, behind something, you want to go ahead and make sure you use what? Absolute. If you take a look at some websites whereby you see some graphics just lying around, let's take a look at Figma, for instance. Let me go to Figma. Let's see. Let's go to Figma, for instance. Figma.com. You hope they still have this. Oh, they're not get them again. Okay, I don't know what happened, but they used to have. They used to have this other thing here, not this animation. But if you want to place things, okay, I'm just trying to see where you can use. Okay, something like this new. If you want to do something like this new, if you don't want to type them together, you can also use position absolute. I'm trying to see some set. There are some websites you see, you just see some graphics floating around. Okay, to achieve that, you want to make sure you give those graphics position absolute. So with absolute now, you can move things. You can move things. You can move things. Okay, you can stack it on top of other elements. You can stack it on top of other elements. Okay, you can stack it on top of other elements. But remember, the reason why you are able to do this with absolute basically removes this element from the confines or the constraint of this container, and you can overlay it on top of other things. So think of it as an overlay. Anytime you want to put something as an overlay, you want to use what? Absolute. Okay. And we have the last one, fixed. Okay, second to the last one, we have fixed and sticky. Fixed is like static, but it is usually at a particular spot. So with fixed, you can just fix something at a particular spot. And once it gets there, it will just remain there. It won't scroll. It won't flow with the other pages. So if you choose something as fixed, if you are scrolling, you can see it has gone off. It won't, let's go up, 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 up. I think it has gone under the page. It has gone under the page. It has gone under this particular element. So we need to like bring it back. Let's go and choose 0. Let's also choose 0 here. So you can see it has gone to the top. You can see the way it sticks to the top. That is what fixed is. So you can actually position it anywhere you want. Okay, that is fixed, and it will stay there. It will stay there. Absolute can move around. Okay, with fixed, it's just going to stay there. You can see no matter how you scroll, it's just there waiting for you. Okay, you see this thing being used in like giving maybe newsletters or informations whereby you have like just this a fixed scrolling element. No matter how you scroll, it's just there. I get it. So that's when you use fixed. Okay, it's just like an absolute positioning, but then it sticks to a particular place. Meanwhile, with sticky, you can define how long the user scroll before it sticks. Okay, so you can define how long the user scroll before it now sticks. That's the difference between sticky and fixed. So at this point, if you have any question, because it's important you understand this particular positioning. If you don't understand this positioning, it will be difficult for you to work with CSS, with Webflow in terms of positioning things. Okay, Abdurrahman. Are you there? Abdul, are you there? You raised up your hand. Abdul, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, sir. About absolute positioning. For example, now let's say I have a particular image as a child element. So I want it above another element. Does it have any interaction with the parent element? Like, am I just going to use it as absolute position without? Is it not going to affect the parent element?
If you use absolute, it won't affect it.
Absolutely.
Absolute basically removes it from that particular container and puts it on top.
Okay.
Now elements stack on top of each other. You can see the way we added the red one. If we add another div now, it will go under here. Okay.
Okay.
If we add another div now, it will go under the green one. If we add another one, it will go to the next one by default.
Okay. Okay.
But if we should change this green one, okay, let's do it. Let me duplicate this again. And for this one, let me add a combo class. Let's call this absolute. So this one is different from this one now. If I change this to absolute, watch what happens. You can see right now, I'm coming. You didn't see what happened. Let me change it back. Let me change it back to static. Let me change this color first. Let me change its color. Okay. Remember, default behavior is basically them stacking on top of each other, right? So if I should change this, let's try the second one first. If I should change this to relative, nothing happens. So even if I move this like this, you see that space is not affected. It's not affecting this one. This one is not coming to join this one because naturally you might think, oh, if I shift this one will come and join this, right? But you can see with position relative, this white space is still preserved. But let's take this back to static. If you should use absolute for this positioning, it's going to remove this from this default stacking. It's going to remove it, and this green one will take up the space here. Watch what happens now. If I use absolute, you can see that the green one have taken up that space. Okay, let's bring it back to 0. And let's just adjust it manually. I'm going to bring it back to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I don't know if you understand now.
I understand. Yeah, understood.
Okay. So that's the difference between absolute and relative. Where is this thing? Let me zoom backwards. Oops. What's going on? 67, 68, 68, 100. Okay. So it's hiding under somewhere. So to bring it up where it's hiding, is it here? So we literally want to move this down. Okay. And another thing, okay, another thing, let me show you people this thing is very important. Right now, it is on the body. It is directly on the body, okay? Now, why is it on the body? Anytime you use this absolute, it takes the absolute position of any element that is relative to. Okay, read the thing there. Absolute positions and elements relative to its closest position parents. So what exactly are they saying here? It simply means that when you use absolute, it's going to position it closest to the element, the parent element, using what? Relative. Okay, so since this particular element, what is the closest element? The parent element of this guy is this white container. But you see, this white container is using static. So what happened is that it took out, it now directed it to the body. So let's choose this one and choose relative. You can see if we select that section and choose relative, immediately we choose this absolute position, it will be directly linked to this particular guy. That is why, if you notice, in the main sections we did, the M row, okay, the M rows, you notice that we used relative instead of static. The reason why we use relative is so that if there is any element we want to position using absolute, it will not go off. It will just find the closest what? Parent. Okay, so let's come back here. I hope this is making sense. Like I said, this positioning, it can look confusing, but once you grasp it, you can, because even animation, in animation, what separates different animation is basically how you position things, hide, and then reveal elements. Okay, so you really need to understand this positioning. Important. Okay, Khadijat.
Yes, you said this static and fixed, they are kind of the same. I really didn't understand.
Static is in terms of the space they occupy, they are the same, because any space where they occupy, they'll just be there. The only difference is if you use fixed will not move when you scroll, but with static, when you scroll, you move past it.
Okay.
You know what I mean by scrolling, right?
Yes, sir.
That's why I gave you people an example. Example where you use fixed elements. If you go to some website, you notice that maybe a particular news that they are giving is just there, right? Maybe immediately you enter the news, it's just at the top. It is fixed at the top. And even if you are scrolling, it's just there. That is fixed,
Okay.
right? But with static, immediately you scroll, you will pass it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I give you people instances where you can use it. So if you don't really get the explanation, you picture the instance, then know exactly what it is for. Okay. You can see all these elements, like this Webflow interface now, it could be said to be fixed somehow, because no matter how you scroll, you see that all these interfaces, they don't change, they don't scroll with you, except the canvas. I think it, they don't
Yes, sir.
change with you. So you can achieve things like this using fixed. So you tell it, see where you go day. Now here you go day, just stay there. That is fixed. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is position. And after that, we took a look at typography. This one is very easy to understand. But another thing again, remember when you have an element, the main container is the parent. Okay, the main container is the parent. So if you want to use relative, anytime you want to use relative, make sure that the parent container is having sorry, anytime you want to use absolute, make sure that the parent container is having the relative. Okay, if not, it will go and pin to the body because the body itself is like the pata of all of them. Are you getting it? Because everything we are doing, if you come back here, you notice that everything we are doing is inside the body tag. Okay, so that is it. Typography is fair enough. Fonts, weight, and the rest, and the alignments and styling. Okay, styling and also decoration. So it's very easy to understand. Background is also very easy to understand. You have your color. If you don't want solid colors, you can click on this plus sign here. If you click on the plus sign here, you have different ways to color this. You can add a picture. You can add a linear gradient. You can add a radial gradient, or you can do a color overlay. Color overlays are mainly used for images. So with color overlays, you can, if you have an image or even a normal color, if you have a color, you can overlay another color on top of it. Okay, that is what color overlay. It can also have images. You can overlay colors on top of them. This one is gradient. This one is linear gradient, while this is for image. If you want to use image as a background, go ahead and choose your image and set the custom size. Okay, before I proceed, any question? Meanwhile, you can add multiple images and multiple colors. If you take a look at here, we have plus. So with plus, you can see now we have how many? 2, 1, 2. So you can keep adding different type of images to create different types of effects. Are we together? So let's ask questions before I proceed. Okay, Abdurrahman, go ahead. Abdurrahman, go ahead.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah,
Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you loud and clear.
My question is, any element that
Yeah,
is, let's say, an image now, and
yeah.
in absolute position,
Mm.
is it possible to have 100% width, like full the
Yes,
entire?
yes. Very, very, very possible.
Okay.
Yes. But you need to understand what you mean by 100% width. 100% width depends on the container where it is. So, like if the container is, if it is this main container, you need to understand if what you mean is to cover it entirely, just use your view height and view width. Okay, like if you go to some website whereby when you click on the menu or the search bar, it launches the search bar and it covers the entire screen. That is as an overlay. That is an absolute position kind of element that have been set to view height and view width. That's VHVW. Okay, and immediately after that, we have border. So border, you can add borders like strokes. You can add borders here, and also you can do border radius here, which is like the corners. You can corner it anyhow you want. Okay, and it all depends on what you want to do. There are a lot of things you can do, and for the stroke, you can add strokes. And immediately after that, we went straight to blending. So you can use this blending mode to create different effects. But remember, to see it, it must be interacting with another layer behind it. Okay. Then you have opacity. That's how transparent it's going to be. You use opacity a lot. You also see opacity when you're adding colors. Okay. So you can use this thing to create effects when designing. You also have box shadow, very, very important. Box shadow, you use this add box shadows. That shadow basically, it's called box shadow. So you have different elements here. You have the x-axis of the shadow, the y-axis of the shadow, the blur value, the size of the shadow, and also the color. It also has transparency. So you can do outside shadows, which you add shadow under it, or inside shadows, which you create like an inset shadow. So example, you can have something like this. I'm just doing this, but remember, most of the time the designers will be the ones to give you the design. Then if you increase the blur value, you can begin to have something like this classmorphic effect. Okay. And remember, it's not just one. You can add one shadow like this. You click on plus, you add another shadow. So it all depends on what you want to do. You can add another shadow here. I'm coloring that one white, and instead of this, I'll be going this other way, and I'll also be going this other way, just to create whatever it is looking like. I don't know what is that, but I'm just showing you example of you can create like a neuromorphic effect. Okay, so this is shadow. You can use shadows to create different types of effects. Just remember that shadows, backgrounds, colors can add multiple. All these ones that have plus close to them, you can always add multiple. Okay, so that is for shadows. 2D transforms, that's just for the shape. You can transform them, you can scale, you can move, you can skew. Like if I come to rotate or skew, I use skew most of the time. You can skew this shape. You can see, you can create different types of effects. It does not work only on shape, it works with sections, it works with elements, different types of elements. You can skew them and have some kind of animations. Remember, if this was an animation, you can make this as a hover state. When you hover on something, it just skews a little bit. So that is what you have there. So the next section is going to be extremely interesting because we are about to round up. Then you have transitions. We won't be doing, I think we'll just take this transition in the next part. Transitions, filters, backdrop filters, cursor, and events. So this is everything we have done on the styling. These parts, they are self-explanatory. You should understand it. Now, in our main project, we are going to be adding a lot of things, including the responsiveness. So if you notice, most of the designs we've done, we have not taken care of the responsive part. We've not taken care of the responsive part because if I go to tablet here, you can see if we scroll down, things are not looking good. So we have another way. Sorry, give me 1 minute, guys. I don't know, someone is at my door shouting. Okay, I'm back. I think my neighbors came to inform me that they brought lights. So we didn't start early. We would have actually optimized this file to make it responsive. So if you see, if we also go to mobile portrait, things are not looking really great. So anytime you finish designing, you want to go inside all these elements to make sure they are responsive. But our default menu is already responsive. But the elements, we need to make sure they are responsive as well. Responsiveness is basically going into all these elements and resizing them and giving them the proper sizes for each device, so that when someone visits, irrespective of their device, they are going to get a very well laid out element. And the way it works is anything you apply here, any of these styles you apply on the desktop affects the rest. If I'm on tablet, any style that I change will not affect, it doesn't go backward, it goes downward. Okay, so when I'm on tablet, any changes I apply will only affect from tablet down, it won't go this way. So when I come to mobile portrait, this is mobile landscape. If I'm on mobile portrait, any changes I apply will apply to only mobile. So basically that's how responsiveness works. And in our advanced class, we also take a look at interaction, what will begin to give life to all these things. Basically, what we did here was hover states, okay? It's just hover states, but we need to be able to add on page triggers and more nice advanced stuff. And we even look at how to use third-party components when creating our, because sometimes creating everything from scratch might actually take more time. But you are learning Webflow, so we are going to show you how to do it from scratch and also how to leverage other third-party apps out there, because the company you might be designing for, they might not have extra resources or additional resources to pay for additional stuff. So at least you should know how to do some basic interaction like on-page animation, slider animation, and what have you. So these are the things we are going to be taking a look at in the next section. Remember, we are going to be doing a full-blown design, okay? So next week, you are not going to be having daily tasks. So next week you are resting. But this rest is only if you have completed the assignments. Okay, if you've completed the assignment, you can rest next week and we resume the upper week. Okay, but make sure you are checking the group for information. The only thing you are going to be doing next week, we want to learn how to structure our websites based on best practices. So we are going to be sharing this link on Sunday. So we are going to be sharing this link. You are going to come in here and you are going to go to read docs. Okay, so this is called the FinSuite client first approach. So this is just a guide of how you should do things, because Webflow, if you don't manage your classes, it's going to become a problem. So this is one of the ways you could actually learn how to manage your design. There is no technical stuff here. You are not also expected to cram anything here. You can always come to check it out, and you must not implement it though. You must not implement it. If you have another way that will work for you, that is fine. But they have actually laid out a way that makes design and managing designs in Webflow very easy. Okay, so you're going to come in here, you learn things like class strategy. Okay, you learn like core structure strategy. Just take a look at them. They are not much. Like if you go to core structure strategy, you can see it is not much. It is just to read through this. Like I said, it's not technical. It's just to read through this. Okay, you can even complete this. Actually, when I was learning, I completed this within 2 days. And it was because I was not just reading it at once. Although they've made it for you and they said 7 days, it is not 7 days. There's nothing here. It's not like you are cramming it. It's just them telling you best practices. And like I said, you must not use it. But it's important that you know some best practices and intentionally avoid it because of your own reason, than not even knowing them and then you're just doing things blindly. Okay. So that's the end of our class today, and you can see by the time we finish designing, we activated back our header and it's beginning to look like it's a full website, but remember, it's not a full website. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so no question. So since there are no questions, I'll go ahead and round up the live session. So thank you guys for attending. Okay, so let me go ahead and end this live session. So I will see you guys next week Friday. Okay, like I said, all through the week. So if you log into your portal, you're not going to see any task. Okay, instead I'll just drop this on the group chat and we go through it, and we'll meet on Friday. Okay, have a good night, guys.